Welcome to the Southside Show, your local news and information source for Atlanta's South Side.
Welcome to the Southside Show. I'm your host, Artie Jones III. The Southside Show will introduce you to talented individuals, visionary leaders, innovative entrepreneurs, and game changers that make a Southside strong. Our guest today is a native of New York. He served as a consultant to opening 60 restaurants. He made his first million before 26 years old. He's known as one of the few brunch pioneers of Atlanta. He's owned, operated, and helped conceive several breakfast and brunch-oriented spots around Atlanta, including the Breakfast at Barney's and Gaucher's Breakfast Bar. He's the owner of the Breakfast Boys in College Park. I'd like to introduce you to and welcome Lorenzo Wyche to the Southside Show. How you doing, Lorenzo?
I'm good, Artie. How are you?
Great, great.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. Well, I mean, I know that you are an early morning man, given that you are the, I guess, the breakfast and the brunch pioneer of the Atlanta metro area and probably maybe even the country. Tell our Southside Show guest a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and a little bit about your family first.
Oh, wow. You see the little grays in my hair. The show might not be long enough to cover. Yeah, you said early. I've been up since 5 a.m. That's kind of my routine. Mm-hmm. Early bird gets the worm.
Right.
But some people don't like worms, so I'll eat all the worms and take the early morning rise. And I started out in the restaurant business many moons ago, coming out of high school into college, going to school for hospitality in New York City. Worked with big brands like Walt Disney World in Orlando, and came here, worked in Buckhead with Buckhead Life, and opened up Justin's with Puff Daddy Combs. And then after cutting my teeth with the corporate restaurants, I started my own restaurant group called Lorenzo Wyche Restaurants from 2005 to 2014 in Atlanta, opening up the Harlem Bar, Rare, and the Social House, which is probably one of the first brunch restaurants back in 2009. Wow. And then fast forward, I sold those restaurants and started consulting. And as you mentioned earlier, as a consultant, I've been able to help a lot of African American entrepreneurs branch into the restaurant space, including some of the people you mentioned and others. And so it's been a good ride. Recent restaurant I just opened up with my two partners, G and Juan from Virgil's, is the Breakfast Boys. Okay. And it's to kind of create an all-day social gathering where we offer French toast and chicken and waffles and pancakes and great coffee and a smiling, happy face to everyone here in the historic College Park, the airport area in south of 20. Okay,
what was your inspiration in even getting into, the restaurant business in the first place? Was there a family member, or is it just something that you grew accustomed to like to do?
Well, my dad said Anthony, which is my middle name. He's Lorenzo Sr., I'm Lorenzo Jr., so okay. Call me Lorenzo because we Anthony. You like to eat. You gonna go in the restaurant business. And I told him I like to argue too. You didn't tell me to be a lawyer.
Right,
so
right.
I ended up in the food business simply as that way. I guess sometimes we try to make these stories complicated, but it was a good move. I mean, sometimes I do wish I probably would have been an attorney. It might have been less hours, or maybe less work, or less like hassles and so forth, being in the restaurant business. Everybody knows it's a tough industry.
Right.
But that's how I started out, working in the business as a teen, and working at like little sandwich shops. And then it was great going to school. At the same time, I was in the restaurant business because it was pretty much hands-on. I would go to class and learn about food and culinary, and then I would go right into the restaurant as a job, part-time job. So it was easy to kind of transition into school and then get out of school and get right into it.
Okay. Yeah. What was your first major break into being able to open up restaurants, from, I guess, becoming a staff person, working in one, being in school, to the point of owning your own?
Yeah, I mean, very early on, I had a run-in with one of my managers, and it didn't feel good. And so that was when I felt like, you know what, I probably don't get along in this environment because I'm more of a free spirit. I kind of think outside the box. And so opening my own business, I felt like that was kind of the end game for me. And I lucked up early on. I looked at an ad back before the internet, before the internet was kind of getting around, and there was a Creative Loafing in Atlanta. That was like the newspaper. Right. In the back of the newspaper, there was an ad for a nightclub for rent for $600. And so I went to go look at this
$600 restaurant.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta really see what this looks like. I didn't know what it was. So I went down there. It was in the West End off Simpson Road. It was it was the old Charles Disco, which people who've been around know that place.
Right.
So apparently Charles passed away, and he deeded the whole plaza to his baby mama, his child's mother, his son's mother. His son was like really young at the time. And so it was just the weirdest thing. So the family didn't like that he deeded the plaza to her, so they burned down the nightclub.
Wow.
And then outside the nightclub sits in a corner, and then you have a daycare, a laundromat.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, a bunch of little businesses, little mom and pops. And so they burned the nightclub down, so she wanted me to rent that. And I walked in and I opened up the front door, unlocked the door, opened it up. As soon as you open the door up, you look straight into the sky. So I was like, what? What do you want me to do with this? So she's like, oh yeah, you can just, spruce it up. I'm like, there's no sprucing, you need a roof. There's water coming through the roof. So I said, I'm not interested. But she said, you know what happened? So 3 corners down, some drug dealers owned the laundromat and the restaurant. And back that time, I guess like when Maynard was mayor, or sometime after, they had a group called the Red Dogs.
Yeah,
and the Red Dogs came in
them.
and they kidnapped the drug dealers and took them out of the business. So literally we opened up the door, there's silverware on the table. It looked like the restaurant was open yesterday, but it hadn't been open for like months. There's silverware on the table, pots and pans ready to go.
Wow.
So I said, what do you want for these 2 things? And she's like, for the restaurant, give me $700 a month, and for the laundromat, give me $700. So I was like, deal. And I called a friend of mine, and he gave me like $2,000. We were in business together. And that was my first restaurant at like 24, 25.
Wow.
Yeah, it was weird. It was really weird.
I don't think anybody can make a story up like that.
Nah, it definitely couldn't.
Now, was it a success?
It's still there now.
Yeah, was it a success?
So I learned how to do a payroll. I learned how to cut my teeth. Doing the things that you don't really learn in school. There is no teacher. I mean, my family didn't own businesses. My dad was a teacher. Everyone around me worked. So it was my first time doing a payroll. It was my first time paying bills every month. It was my first time ordering and receiving, and just kind of understanding how the restaurant business works, the nuts and bolts. Sales, marketing. We were in the hood. So a lot of times you think in the hood, oh yeah, like one of the things we learned was that, this is a bigger story, I don't want to get too out of pocket, but essentially we were catering to the local folks.
Right.
The drug dealers, the welfare queens next door, the city workers who were passing through. I mean, it was a really depressed area, really low income area. And so we just kind of learned a lot about that community. And how do we appeal to that community as a customer versus what we wanted? We came from in the city, so we had a whole different vision of what we wanted. But what the reality was, we were selling 99-cent chicken wings and doing barbecues some days, which didn't make sense because we owned a restaurant. So it was just a different experience.
Right.
And ultimately, what happened, I wanted to kind of ramp up it and just buy the plaza and just create more of like a experiential. I mean, I didn't know the word experiential at 25, but I was like, you know what? Why don't we let them do the laundry here, get a daycare here? We'll just make a whole deal.
Right.
And my partner at the time, he's one of these guys like to walk around with the suits and never really knew what he did. And he would come in there in the hood with his little suit on. I'm like, bro, what you got a suit on for? We gotta wash dishes. So I told him, I said, you know what, man? Let me buy you out. And he was like, well, I don't want to get bought out. I want my son to own this and some weirdness. And I was like, bro, then buy me out. So he said, I'll buy you out. So we did like an owner finance deal. I said, just don't give me any money this month. Just pay me X amount of dollars over the next several months. And the first month he missed the payment. The second month he got robbed. And the third month he went out of business.
Wow.
Yeah, and then that was that. That was the end of that little experience. We was out there for about a good 7-8 months.
Okay.
Hanging out.
Well, how did you rebound from that?
So the funny thing was, I lived down the street from one of my first successful restaurant. So coming out of that deal, I felt confident. I didn't, I had a little bit of money left over, and I found a location right on. I was driving down Edgewood Avenue, by the Sweet Auburn Curb Market. And there was this little lease sign across from the Curb Market. So I called the lease sign. Some guy from the Curb Market was renting the place out as a catering place. But he said, we'll lease it to you for $1,200 a month. So I went in, and then we started building out. And on that business, I actually drew from my experience with Justin's, and then I was working with Shark Bar. So I felt like we needed an upscale, fine dining, basically chicken place, you know, fried chicken, collard greens, candy yams, mac and cheese on white tablecloth, which in Atlanta has always been a good formula, you know, Justin's, Gladys Knight. And so I felt like that would be a better product offering for us. Yeah. And it took off. First year, that's when I made my first million at between 25 and 26 years old. Wow. And you could say it's luck, but a lot of it was just the tools that I picked up, and I just applied them all at the right time. So, you know, it could have went either way. But I happened to think of Justin's, I happened to think of Shark Bar. We happened to be in the city. The interior designer just was a guy that was doing flyers for me, and then he just kind of came along, which made the place more beautiful, which when you're doing finer dining, the people care about beauty. Right. Especially Atlanta's a very aspirational city, so Atlanta diners like to be in beautiful spaces. And that's how that place came about. Okay. Yeah. How
did you get your first break with opening, you know, restaurants for like entertainers and, you know, other types of, I guess, professionals, those famous individuals? Did they frequent your restaurants? Is that kind of the first step, or how did that come about?
I think I kind of was it's a small circle, like any industry. If you're in construction or if you're in entertainment in Atlanta, there is a small circle. So between my publicist and other restaurant folks, people kind of knew me as the restaurant person, the restaurant professional. We create our own culture. We draw down culture from Darden and Brinker and Disney and Buckhead Life and all these great restaurants, and we create what's called a best practice. So any restaurant I'm a part of, most people understand that we're gonna probably be at a tier of best practice. It's gonna be the same experience that you'd experience at a Houston's, just modulated for what we're trying to do. Right. And so once my reputation became known as like that person who delivers a great quality product at a great standard, then people just kind of looked for me. They found me. Yeah. So a lot of, you know, I wouldn't say just celebrities, but just people. A lot of folks have been wanting to get into the restaurant business, and we'll say pre-YouTube, pre-Instagram, and it just seems so impossible. But I think once the social media started showing more folks doing it, people started believing it was possible. Because when I did it, people they were like, oh, a liquor license is $1 million, and they didn't understand the structure on how to get a restaurant open. Mm-hmm. And then you had guys like one of my friends, Greg, who helped Todd and Candy with Old Lady Gang. He called me when they were going to do that. He called me. I was in Miami. He's like, hey, you want to help Todd and Candy? So I think ushering in those restaurateurs like Todd and Candy and a lot of folks that kind of like started just cutting their teeth, it inspired a lot of other people to do it. Mm-hmm. And when people get inspired, they want to find out what's the best way to do it. So they'll call somebody like me. Okay. Yeah. I know that. I guess taste of food is very important, of course, in a restaurant, but it seems to me, whenever I frequent your restaurant, at least Breakfast Boys, that the customer service is above the average. It seems as though that the presentation is above the average. This is what I would see in the final restaurants. Would you say that that's probably one of the keys to having a successful restaurant? So one of my mentors, he owned a bunch of hotels. He said quality is determined by your customer. And I think sometimes when we're creating businesses from our own perspective, we create a quality perspective from us. So if you're a wealthy businessman who owns an insurance company and you try to open up a lower scale business, it's probably not going to match up if you're looking at it through your lens, because you're going to say, oh, we have the best china, the best silverware, the best this. But really, quality is determined by your customer. For me, I looked at who our customer base is going to be, and brunch is Black women who like the brunch. That's our core customer. I'm unapologetically proud of it. That's Atlanta, and our position is that's our core customer, that's our demographic, and they'll bring everybody else with them. So that woman will bring her opposite coworker to the restaurant, or she'll bring her dad or her mom or her children, but that's our core customer. So we start with that customer in mind. Okay. And that customer is an aspirational customer. She works all week and she wants to get together with her girlfriends and she wants to release, and she wants to do it with a nice glass of wine, with a nice feel to the wine glass. She wants to do it with the right type of music. She wants to do it with beautiful colors and floral. So that's kind of what inspired what the product quality is for us. Okay. Now, if we were doing a fast food restaurant, it's a different thing. If we say, hey, we're going to open up a something for airport workers who are just kind of in between and they want to get some, good, tasty food, then we probably wouldn't put as much time into decor. We'd probably be spending more time on economics, making it more affordable, something that people can eat every day without feeling they're breaking the bank. And so because it's cheaper, everything else comes down as well. The design comes down, the service is cut down a lot. It might be a kiosk situation where there's no service.
Right.
So I don't know if that's the right answer, but that's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And the thing is that you're affiliated with many restaurants in downtown College Park that I frequent quite often. You can't really tell, but I got my jacket kind of tight.
You're doing good. You're doing well.
Yeah. But in opening these restaurants, let's just say, for instance, someone comes to you and says, I want to open up a restaurant.
Right. I tell them, don't do it. That's the first conversation I have.
Okay.
I spend the first day just trying to talk you out of it. Why do you do a restaurant? Man, you got such a good business right here.
Yeah, why is that? Why did you talk them out of it?
It's tough. I think a lot of people are inspired by their mama's chili recipe or the fact they like to go out to eat a lot and they don't see the full totality of the work it is. And I've seen families break up in this business who've tried to come together as families. I've seen people lose their entire net worth. I've seen husbands cheating on their wives fighting with their husbands over money.
Dang.
The business will.
You're really bringing this interview down.
Yeah.
I want you to know that. You're bringing this interview down right now.
How so?
No, all this negative stuff. But it is scary. It's
well, 9 out of 10 restaurants fail, and that's a fact. And there's a reason why. And so I give them the restaurant reality. And then honestly, I only work with entrepreneurs, so I don't really work with folks who just like, hey, I got a couple of bucks, I want to open something up, I have a retirement account. I work with entrepreneurs because they already have, in any business you have to have a niche. My niche, when I was consulting, is I only work with people who've had existing businesses because I can't build you up to understand how business works. I can't build you up to understand what cost of goods are and marketing and sales. I can't convince you to start marketing. So I can be very honest with that person because they've already cut their teeth in a trucking business. My last client, Barney's, he was in the trucking business. Gaucher was in the hair care business, extremely successful in the hair care business. Nouveau, they were in real estate in Chicago. Who else? G1, my partners now, they were doing a ton of stuff in corporate and then investing in events and stuff like that. So I take folks who already have success in something and I tell them, you don't want to do this because it's incredibly hard and all these reasons. And if they still want to do it, which is tend to be like an entrepreneurial optimism, then we go into, how we're going to make it happen, if that makes sense.
Okay, makes sense. Tell me, how did you start opening businesses in like Miami and Dubai? I mean, how did you just end up, consulting in those types of locations?
So I sold my restaurants off, and what do you do when you got a couple bucks and you nothing to do? I decided to travel a little bit and take a break. I've been working in the restaurant business since 16, pretty much nonstop. Other little vacations, but pretty much business to business to business, no breaks in between. And so I had a friend in Dubai. She started a PR company, so I went out, I invested in her business and went out there and just kicked it for a few years and just kind of like tried to explore other industries that I didn't know much about, but that type of thing. And then I started running out of money. So that's one thing I learned. If you don't have money coming in.
That happens?
Yeah. I don't care how much you got saved up. It goes fast. I think people realize that in the pandemic, people had all this money from different sources. And they were like, oh yeah, I'm good to go. I'm like, no, you need to keep making money because if you're sitting on that and depending on it, it's gonna be gone fast. So, after, obviously Dubai it was kind of running its course. I have a daughter here. Time zone was the exact opposite. So trying to talk to a 3-year-old at 3 a.m. in the morning was really weird. So I came back to Atlanta. I wanted to go to a more international city, so I just went in and be close to my daughter. So I just went down to Miami. And then consulting came out of the necessity to work. I mean, what do you do? The thing about restaurant owners, we have no real skill sets. We are like a jack of all trades. So there's no real job you can take. Like, how do you go from making multiple of millions to making $40,000? It's a hard carry. So consulting came out of just trying to solve that problem of how do I continue to make money with the skill sets I have, but there aren't really tangible skill sets. I can't plumb, I I'm not an electrician.
Right.
But if I'm in a restaurant, I know how to fix that drain leak and I know how to get the power back up.
Right.
I'm not an accountant, but if in a restaurant, we can look at a P&L and break down some of the financials. So I found that, I tried to do the consulting thing, which was like turnkey, turnaround restaurant stuff. That didn't work because I realized most restaurant owners will pay you the first check, but then they won't pay you the second check. I don't know what that is. They get impressed with you. They're like, oh, you might know something. So I get the first check, but then the second consulting check never comes, and I keep showing up waiting for it. So that, and then it just kind of gets weird, like, well, what are we doing this month? Oh, I don't know, what did we discuss last month? And so what I found was to niche it down a little bit. And so that's how I got into opening, just doing the openings. Because that's when the client has the most amount of money, they can pay me, and they need me the most because they're scared of sugar honey iced tea. And then all
use
my
that
clients
sugar honey iced tea.
Yeah, sugar honey iced tea. And they all get cocky. So every owner that I've worked with, after they've gotten open, act like I never did anything for them. But that's just the nature of entrepreneurs. They take everyone's good ideas and they run with it, and somehow they convince themselves it was their idea. It's a very strange group. Consultant actually is more it's like being a psychiatrist. I spend more time telling entrepreneurs they can do it and being the only person that can encourage them when they don't really have people around them, because most people are dependent on them. So they're usually pouring into their people, their spouses, their kids, their employees. So what I found with the consulting, really it became more of just someone who could give them some courage through that process until they start making money, and then everybody gets courage.
Right. Okay, man.
Yeah, that's a whole story in its own, trust me.
Yeah. So what particular restaurant are you most proud of?
I like what we're doing at Breakfast Boys. I think what we did with Breakfast Boys, we took the best of, from my own personal, if I could go sit down and talk to myself in the corner, I think I've taken the best of everything that I've learned over the years. Even how we develop, even from our positioning, like right now, most folks are having a lot of challenges with turnover. We don't have any problems with turnover. Our employees stick with us. But I built a restaurant that was pro-employee. And I don't know if that came from instinct or just kind of how I felt where things were going, because I didn't predict the pandemic would switch the market on us.
Right.
Before the pandemic, it was pro-employer. You paid what the market said, which was below minimum wage or minimum wage. Now people make twice minimum wage. The market dictated that. And the employees said, we're not going to come to work. So now you have people making $7.25 is minimum wage. Now employees are making $14, $15 an hour. So I don't know if we were ahead of the curve, but we built a restaurant. We opened up at our employee comes in at 7. So she can drop a typical server in our restaurant, she can drop her children off at school, or they come to work and they're able to get their kids to school, work a shift, 3 o'clock, they get out, they've made a couple $100, close to $50,000 to $80,000 a year annualized, and they go home, get their kids, they're ready to go to bed, make dinner, and come back the next morning. That's our server. So when people say, why are people so happy? Because they have a good job. They really do. They work 4 to 5 days a week. They can take off when they want to take off. We put good management in place. We don't stress them out. We're positive, good energy people, and we don't put them in uncomfortable situations, like arguing with guests and stuff like that. We'll be the bad cop. You be the good cop. So if you say what, I think I've just bringing all the tools that I've built up over the years and put it into one product, and seeing it work very formulaic, like 1 + 1 does equal 2. Create a good work environment for employees with great hours and great pay. It does equal a solid employee. Put great food on the plate, present it well, and in the taste profile of your customer, they will come in and say the food's good and get 5-star reviews, if that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say everything has been, the culmination of now is really taking all the information things that I've done and make it more formulaic. And that's where the consulting came in, because the consulting allowed it to be a formula, because I could go, hey, Artie, open up this restaurant, and we could just drop the formula and get the same results. After 3 or 4 clients, you can see that it's pretty formulaic. So that I think is what we bring to the table now. I bring to the table now that I didn't have before.
All right. And if any of the Southside Show guests would like to contact you, do you have a website or any other way that they could?
Instagram.
Instagram.
Lorenzo Wyche Restaurants. At Lorenzo Wyche Restaurants. That's the best way to reach me. Or if you're in the restaurant. In fact, come on down to the restaurant. We're at 3387 Main Street in College Park, Georgia. You can park right up front, or you can park somewhere off the street, and I'll be right there in the dining room.
All right.
8 to 3 daily, 8 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday.
All right. Well, thank you, Lorenzo. And this is a wrap, folks. My time is up. I'm Artie Jones, your host of the Southside Show, bringing you the latest and the greatest that the Southside has to offer. And if you don't remember anything, please remember this.
Don't sleep on the Southside.